Welcome to chapter 29 of the book of Ezekiel, prophecy against Israel. Again, in the 10th year, in the 10th month, day 1 of the month, the word of the Lord came to me saying, now these time period, few chapters back, I had a list which you could see with which chapters had the time mentioned in it and exactly what that was from. I'm not sure. If it was from the certain king or his beginning of his reign or the first fall of Jerusalem. I'm not sure when Ezekiel left Jerusalem, possibly, but anyway, you can see by the genealogy the time frame that's mentioned here is a time frame to Ezekiel, and you can see where it jumps around in the book of Ezekiel. So it's not always in chronological order. But again, it starts off with the logos, Kyriou pros me legon, anthropu. The word of the Lord came to me, saying, O son of man. Again, another beginning of another, the word of the Lord coming to Ezekiel. And in this case, it says, O son of man, firmly fix your face against Pharaoh, Vasileia Egyptu, and prophesy against him and against entire or the whole of Egypt, entire Egypt. Now, it doesn't mention the Pharaoh by name, and it does use the word Pharaoh. Now, today, in 21st century, there's no pharaohs of Egypt, and I don't know if there would be in the future, but so you would think that, well, this census mentions of Pharaoh, that it would be back in the time of Ezekiel to that Pharaoh. But if you go to the verse 11 to the end, you'll see when we get there that the time frame is for the future. It hasn't happened yet. The things that are going to be that are prophesied here. So in that case, the Pharaoh, using that term to me, would be an allegory of a ruler, of a king of Egypt. It says Pharaoh, king of Egypt. So it has two different titles. A king is a title, and a Pharaoh is a title also. And a leader, I don't know. But it's the best I can come up with, because at the end, it's obviously the things that haven't happened to Egypt are going to happen in the future. So it says prophesy against him and against entire Egypt. Now, so whoever this person is of Egypt, speak and say, thus says Adonai Kyrios, behold, I am against you, Pharaoh Vasileph, Egyptu Vasileph. Basil plant comes from that, a basilica, the royalty. The great dragon, he calls him here. So now we've got a little description of this person called the great dragon. The great dragon appears a few places in the Bible, and I'm going to use my entities, the book of Revelation. I'll turn the light on here so you can see, again, this book that we have, and then we'll turn it and open it up to, it has right here, a dragon. Drakon is the Greek word, and the second one in the Septuagint, or the Greek Old Testament, in Isaiah 27, 1 and 2, it says, in that day God will bring on the holy and the great, the holy and the great and the strong sword against the dragon, the fleeing serpent, against the dragon, the crooked serpent, and he will do away with the dragon, the one in the sea. And then in 12:9 of Revelation, it says, and the great dragon, the same here as the saying, the great dragon was cast, the ancient serpent, being called a devil and Satan, was cast. So then in 22, and he sees the dragon, the ancient serpent, who is the devil and Satan, the one misleading the entire inhabitable world, and bound him 1,000 years. So now the great dragon here, it mentions it. Now, if this is a future time, and it's not Pharaoh of Egypt at that time that this is written, but a future time, because of the last verse 11 on, then this great dragon could very well be Satan, and somehow tied into Egypt as a king of Egypt, are the beast that comes. That's the best I can come up with. It's interesting, though, these things that Ezekiel shows and says. But you could say, well, this is just an allegory of somebody that was in the past. But wait till we get later to 11. So what about this great dragon lying in wait in the midst of his rivers, wherever he is? The one saying, the rivers are mine, similar to the ruler of Tyre, and I made them. Well, I don't think a pharaoh would have actually thought he made the river. Maybe not. Somehow this entity taking over and putting himself up as God, it almost seems like it continues, but it gives a different person in the Pharaoh of Egypt rather than the ruler of Tyre here. And I, God, will put snares into your jaws, and I will cleave the fishes of your river, now it could be the Nile, to your wings. Not exactly what wings on these on this dragon. And I will lead you from out of the midst of your river, and all the fishes of the river I will cleave to your scales. Now, some people could say, well, that's an alligator. I guess they have crocodiles. Alligators are in the United States. The scales on an alligator, it's a reptile, so it could be referring to that. And I will throw you down quickly in all the fishes of your river. Upon the face of the plain you shall fall, and no way shall you be brought together. No way shall you be screened, covered over. To the wild beasts of the earth and to the winged creatures of the heaven I have given you for a thing to be devoured. And sort of the same thing it was talking about in the ruler of Tyre. 28. And all the ones dwelling in Egypt shall know that I am Kyrios, the Lord, because you became a rod of reed to the house of Israel, striking them probably of what he's talking about here. And he did that, Pharaoh did that back in the time of Moses, with the children of Israel being in Egypt for those years, from 12 tribes of Israel, Jacob going to Egypt, with Joseph being the second in charge. And then when they took hold of you with their hand, then you were fractured. He's talking about here a fractured reed. People used canes for an actual cane that was in the water. They bent them and they made them into a cane a crutch type cane to use. And when they were put all your weight on it and it broke, then that spike of the broken reed could go into your hand and fracturing. I believe that's what he's talking about here. So when you rely upon Egypt, when Israel relied upon Egypt, they failed in the past. When every hand prevailed against them, and when they rested upon you, you were broken, and you broke the loin of them. You were not able to help Israel at any time. They were always maybe a neighbor, but it was a bad neighbor. They never really helped. Pharaoh Necho came and ended up fighting against Nebuchadnezzar right after this time that Ezekiel's writing, and went up and fought against King Josiah and killed King Josiah. Then came down and dethroned his son, who became king when he heard of Josiah's death. So Nebuchadnezzar came down, but Necho came down and also then went back into Egypt. He could care less about the Israelites. On account of this, thus says Adonai Kyrios, behold, I bring upon you the broadsword, war, and will destroy men from you and beasts. Now, I'm not exactly sure from the beasts. It's interesting that he would mention that. Beasts, if it was in the future, in the Satan, and we have the beast from the water and the beast from the land, wild beast. I'm not sure if it's the same beast, though. I think the other one's Therion, and this is Catini. So I think I'll take that back because I believe this Catini is not a wild beast, but it's like a cattle and so forth, but horses. And the land of Egypt will be for destruction and desolation. So it was by different periods of time. People came in and made war against them. Nebuchadnezzar mentions going into Egypt. And they shall know that I am the Lord because of your saying, the rivers are mine and I made them. Again, setting himself up as God, which could be, again, that part could be in the future. Now, on account of this, behold, I am against you and against all your rivers. Now, what is all your rivers? They only had one river, and that was the Nile, although they did have different tributaries when they came to the delta of the Nile Delta. So it could be the Nile Delta and the rivers, the tributaries he's talking about here, or it could be nations and so forth in a future time. And I will give the land of Egypt unto desolation. Well, now here we're starting to become a little bit different because of Egypt into desolation, in the broadsword, war, and destruction, from Migdol and Syene, even unto the borders of the Ethiopians. So we can go here to our map, which I have, and here is Egypt, and it'll mention Pathros later. And here's Syene down here. This is called upper Egypt because the water went down and streamed down to the lower Egypt and out into the sea. So it was a higher area. And here is Pathos, and here is Migdol, right towards the end, and Jerusalem, and coming around to Migdol, a lot of the Jews did when they left Palestine, fleeing from Nebuchadnezzar, and they went over into Egypt, up into this area. And then the next one, Syene, it mentions, is down here, and there's an island called Elephantinos down here, and Syene is right across from that island in the Nile River. So into the borders of the Ethiopians, which was south. In no way shall there go through by it the foot of a man, and the foot of a beast in no way shall go through it. Now here is what is going to where I see as something in the future, because beasts and animals and man have went through Egypt in that area, but now they're not going to go through. And it goes in and makes it even more succinct by here in the next couple of verses. And the foot of a beast in no way shall go through it. And it shall not be inhabited 40 years. Wow. Well, that has not happened. Egypt has always been inhabited. So to me, this shows that this is a future event that's going to happen. 40 years of people are going to be taken out. It may be at the same time that the Negev, which we will get into, let me see, we already went into that part where the Negev becomes uninhabitable, and therefore it might have been something that went across into Egypt, some type of nuclear fallout, I'm not sure, irradiation of some sort, neutron bomb. And I will appoint her land, Egypt, for destruction in the midst of a land being made desolate. And so here the whole land being made desolate, or it could be the earth, Ge, in the midst of the earth being made desolate, or a land, could be either one for this. Ge, geology is the study of the earth, is where it comes from, Ge. And her cities shall be in the midst of cities being made desolate for extinction 40 years. So now this is, to me, as a more of a, not worldwide, but more wider than the area of just Egypt, this desolation of other cities and places. And I will scatter Egypt among the nations. So these people are going to be going and leaving their place to stay. And I will winnow them among the places. So they're going to be winnowed, scattered by the winds. That's what the winnowing was. You blow and the chaff gets blown away, and the people are cleansed from the chaff. Thus says Adonai Kyrios, And after 40 years, I will gather the Egyptians from the nations, ethnon, ethnic, from the derivative of which they were dispersed there. This has not happened. And I will return the captivity of the Ethiopians, and I will settle them in the land of Pathros, in the land from where they were taken, and that was Upper Egypt. I showed you on the map by that elephantine island. And it will be a humble rule there. It's not going to be a strong nation. More than all the rules, it shall be least, to not be raised up high any more over the nations. Egypt was the main ruling nation over the Muslims at the time of Abdul Gamal Nasser back in the 1950s, until he came to war against Israel and was defeated. And Egypt is still a strong country, has a military, but it's been defeated by the Israelis a couple of times. And finally, Anwar Sadat made a peace treaty with Israel, and that has held so far. But when we get it later and we see the nations that come against Israel, I'm not sure if Egypt was mentioned in there, and we get to the 38th, 39th chapter of Ezekiel. But anyway, they're not going to be a strong, Egypt will not be a strong nation, and I will make them very few, so as for them to not be many among the nations. And now there's a lot of people in Egypt, but there won't be. And no longer will they be any more for a hope to the house of Israel, calling to mind lawlessness in their following after them. That is the lawlessness of Israel following after the Egyptians. And they shall know that I am Adonai Kyrios, and I would think he means the Egyptians, but possibly the Israel, the Jews. I'm not sure there. And now he changes. And it came to pass in the 7th and 20th year, day 1 of the first month, came the word of the Lord to me. So this is the 27th year and the first month. Let's go back here, and this was that was 27th year, the first month, the 10th year and the 10th month. So this is a lot later than what we're seeing right here. Now where I lost it, down here somewhere. There it is. So later came to pass in the 27th year, day 1 of the first month, came the word of the Lord to me, saying, O son of man, Nebuchadnezzar, Nabuchodonosor, king of Asileph's Vavilonos, reduced to slavery his force for a great service against Tyre. Now, that goes back to the 28th chapter. So Nebuchadnezzar did come against Tyre and the army. And every head, kephali, a cephalic, has to do with the head, was bald, and every shoulder loose of hair. Now, exactly like a lament, something bad was happening maybe to Tyre he's talking about there, I'm not sure. And a wage existed not to him, and his force was against Tyre, for the service of which they served against it. Well, anyway, I'm not exactly sure what it all means, but definitely he's just talking about Nebuchadnezzar coming against Tyre for whatever reason. On account of this, thus says Adonai Kyrios, behold, I give to Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, the land of Egypt. Now, whether he actually went there himself or his troops went without him is up for speculation and history. And he shall despoil her spoils, and he shall plunder her plunder, and it will be the wage for his force. So Egypt going down, Nebuchadnezzar and the Babylonians going against the Egyptians. In return for his ministration of which he served against Tyre, that would be Nebuchadnezzar, I have given to him the land of Egypt, because of as much as he worked to me, says Adonai Kyrios. So it's talking about Nebuchadnezzar there, the ruler of, I don't think it's anything in the future, but the ruler of Babylon. In that day there shall rise up a horn to all the house of Israel, and I will give to you a mouth being opened in the midst of them, and they shall know that I am the Lord. Now the horn, some people could say, well, that's the horn, raising up a horn. In a future time would be Jesus, could be a ruler, a power of the future, could be the beast, the horn, all kinds of possibilities of rising. A horn shall rise up to all the house of Israel, and I will give to you a mouth being opened in the midst of them, and they shall know that I am the Lord. So it doesn't sound like it would be the beast, but well, it could be it's still the beast, and I will give to you, being Ezekiel, the word of God somehow, a mouth being opened in the midst of Israel, and they shall know that I am the Lord. This could be a future thing there, that when these things are talking about. There's a lot of places in the Bible where it talks about, just drops in something of the future, and it really hardly, like in the New Testament where it said Rachel weeping for her children because they were no more, and how this relates to the male children that were killed by King Herod. And the New Testament says it. In the time that this happened, they referred to this small passage to something that was happening at the time of Jesus. So these small places jumping out at you and not fitting quite in there, where did this come from? Could be very well something that's in the future, and very difficult to say. Now, the writer of, I'm not sure which book that was, that said about the Rachel, quoting the Old Testament, Rachel having her children were no more, was able to quote that. And so these things here I'm quoting could be something that is from going to be in the future, the opposite of the writer of the New Testament going back. Now, in the next chapter, we're going into, again, the day of the Lord, which I'm sure will have a lot of interest to us today, and because we're getting closer to the day of the Lord and the happenings of the book of Revelation, how it coincides with this day of the Lord, we'll bring out in the 30th chapter and next video. And so I hope you'll join us. And then God bless.